Nigeria doesn't have an economy yet. There's so much bottled up. There's so much we're not doing. Even when you look at African countries, and I've been to a few recently, there's so much chaos in this economy. It's underperforming. We're punching below our weight by far. Maybe, and then a lot of it is informal. I've got a friend who likes to talk about the informal, aspect of the economy, how much people are spending on owambe and, alcohol and all of that kind of stuff, right? Fine, fair enough. But the truth is that the economy is not running at par. I mean, look at a place like Egypt, for example. There's so much going on there. On tourism alone, tourism dollars that pour into Egypt, even into Ghana. I was in Ghana recently. You see Europeans on the streets, at the street corner trying to get into a matatu, into a bus. They don't call it matatu there. I don't know what they call it. And you see that footprint there. In Nigeria, it's an economy that has we've been left to our devices for a while. The world has sort of, quote and unquote, left us to our devices one way or another. But the challenge then becomes, what are we making of this, quote and unquote, relative independence that we have to run our economy how we are? We're running it aground. Things are not working. Today, I was stuck in Apapa trying to get here from Mile 2 for about 2 hours. I mean, and I was thinking in my head, so a country cannot fix the road and the logistics around its main port where you make a lot of money. So maybe I'm thinking, okay, until a white man comes here to sort that out for us, we can't sort it out. That's it. Because there's not supposed to be any problem that has to do with something like engineering and logistics, arranging stuff, setting laws and so on, that should elude a country this long. And we've been trying to fix Apapa Road for the past 20, 25 years. I know that when I started banking in 1992, I used to pass that same Apapa Road from Mile 2 to VI, and it was a breeze then. All of a sudden, it's like a war zone. All right, so the economy is not working at all. It hasn't even started. We're hoping that when it starts, it's going to also work for a lot of us in Nigeria. It's going to trickle down, if you like, to even the poorest of the poor. Remember, of recent, I've been talking and researching and agonizing a lot around what is called economic complexity. And, I ran into the economic complexity index recently, again, as put together by Ricardo Hausman in Harvard. And Nigeria happens to be 133rd country out of 133 countries that were reviewed. We're at the last position. We've been in that last position since 2012. It was only in 2012 we went to second to last, 132. We dropped back to 133, and we had been 133 for a while. Look, we're saying that Nigeria is the least complex economy as a people. If you look at the GNI, the goods and services that we produce here, we're saying that we are adding the least, knowledge quotient to what we produce. We're saying that we can't do anything ourselves. Unfortunately for us, we also happen to have a very high taste in everything foreign. So it's no wonder why we're where we are today. You know what I'm saying? And that's the state of the economy. A lot is not trickling down. Let's not begin to talk about the laundry list of our failures. The children on the streets, you can't give them education. The fact that we have the worst housing problem in the world, according to the United Nations. A rapporteur of the United Nations was here in this country sometime in 2019. She wrote that it was the worst situation she had seen in the world because 70% of Nigerians live in ghettos. Some of them may think they are living in good places, but they are living in ghettos. 70%, not to talk of the large chunk of Nigerians, come from places that are proper ghettos, proper, rundown areas, slums, We built Abuja where I live, and there's no provision in Abuja or around Abuja for where the poor people who serve the rich people in Abuja can live. We built Abuja as an enclave of the rich, and God help you wherever you come from, if you're a driver, a cleaner, a washman, or whatever. And then you see a kind of metastasization, if I can use that word, of slums within that same Abuja. You're flying into Abuja, and you see them. That people, even since this government came, people are just building anything they like, anyhow they like. And you have no provision for them. Maybe sometime in future, some leader will come and a minister will come and say, hey, let's go and demolish all of those places. And then you cause a lot of agony. Why can't you control them before this thing starts? And why can we not have a prototype? This is a country where we've never had a prototype for housing for the poor. We've never had a prototype for housing for rural areas. You go to the rural areas, build with mud, you let it fall when it rains, nobody cares. There has to be some sort of prototype for that. A government has to be in control and, give the people a vision of what you want them to do and do some yourself by way of example before they take it on. I think the CBN has done quite a few things, like everybody knows, central banks, get into fiscal space where the economy is in trouble. In 2007, 8, 9, when we had what was later named the Great Recession, a lot of central banks in developed countries actually moved into monetary policy. That's why you started hearing about quantitative easing and all of that. How much bonds are they selling and all of that to push money into the system. And how many interventions were they having? In that time, the Fed was, intervening in the auto sector, the America's auto sector, bailing out General Motors and Ford and what have you. And so on and so forth, because they believe that these sectors were critical to them. So Nigerian Central Bank has done quite a bit of that. They have the AXMIS loan, which, people have accessed, and I know that a lot of people have accessed that money in this country. They pushed money out in that regards, and so many other kind of interventions, aviation intervention, agric intervention. They have the ABP. Not a lot of them will perform well. Not a lot of them. There's even the fact that Nigerians need to be spoken to know that some of those interventions are not grants, and some people say, oh, well, this is our own national cake and all of that. There's a lot of reorientation that needs to be done around that area. So yes, what is central bank supposed to do? People say, well, they should just target inflation. I disagree. Listen, Nigerians like cliche a lot. It's cliche, central banks are meant to just target inflation. Inflation is man's worst enemy. Fair enough. But when you should remember that this is not the European Central Bank. This is not the Bank of England. This is not the Fed. This is not America. This is not Nigeria. We have problems with unemployment. You have crisis upon crisis. And I tell you what, I don't believe that this country, was in recession until maybe a few months ago. I don't believe that. This country, what I see are symptoms of economic depression. You see, in 1930 to 1939, when the rest of the world, the one that was being mentioned as at then, was in recession, a place like the United States and so on. Of course, what were the issues? You see, what are the symptoms? If you went to a doctor and say, well, I'm not feeling fine, ask you, what are your symptoms? Are you having a headache? Are you having, whatever? Are you having heart palpitations? Do you feel weak in the morning? Is your vision blurred and so on? They're going to ask you. Is what you tell the doctor that's going to make them recommend, okay, what and what? Of course, you run tests and so on, before they know what to do for you. So this country, the symptoms of economic depression are high unemployment rate. Okay, Nigeria has 42.5% youth unemployment rate, 33.3% general unemployment rate, 22.5% underemployment rate. High inflation, usually Nigeria at least 16.9% is still high, pretty high. The point is, what do you want to do with that? Low growth rate. Okay, we're still growing 5.1%, which is probably spoiled by the base effect, the fact that we're coming from a negative position. Otherwise, 5%. People, those who run the economy were ecstatic that 5%. That means we've, But hey, 5% to 16%, they are very much in negative growth rate. 2.6%, population growth rate. And so on and so forth. So we're not quite growing as we should grow. Even, of course, in a depression, you'd have high crime rates. As we're saying that, look, people get kidnapped all over the country. People can't travel by road anymore. Those rural economies that we used to interact with when we go by road, we don't care what's going on with them. The little things that they sell by the roadside, not enough people are buying anymore. Perhaps there's a deflation going on in that regard. Perhaps they're selling those things at a loss just to get them off the ground. Nobody cares. Do you know, in this economy, when we gather in all of our, conference halls and so on, Nobody models those local economy. Nobody cares. And they don't have any representative in those halls to say, hey, this is what we're facing, this is what we're passing through. Nobody talks about them. We talk about how to borrow more money from abroad, how foreign investors are going to come in. That's what we talk about. So every of the symptoms of an economic depression is with us, even when our economy is growing, quote and unquote. High crime rate, high poverty rate, high illiteracy rate, high unemployment rate, high inflation rate, with us. So, and I think this is very important for us to tell ourselves the truth. You see, if I was an economic manager in Nigeria today, we'll start from telling ourselves the truth. That's the only thing that can help us and give us a correct direction of what we should be intervening in. So I think that the central bank has done its, keeps doing its own bit. Of course, we'll be criticized for getting into fiscal policy. But what if the fiscal guys aren't moving in fast enough? The fiscal guys seem to be like, a trailer in a cul-de-sac. For you to make a U-turn of the fiscal space in this country is almost impossible. Do you know, as we speak, as far as I know, that employees grade level 11 and below in the Federal Civil Service are still at home since April 2020, and being at home, working from home in Nigeria is equivalent to don't just bother coming, go and do whatever it is you like. And we're paying salaries, and we're borrowing money to sustain this recurrent expenditure, which is part of the paying of salaries and so on. So the fiscal space is so difficult to turn. When COVID hit and everybody was sitting at home and there was a lot of uncertainty, Mr. Charles Anagolu of Arise, interviewed the Minister of Finance, and of course, those hard-hitting questions. He asked, you guys weren't buying local when the going was good. How come you weren't buying local cars and so on? And she said, well, yeah, it was a mistake they made, but have they changed? So the fiscal space is not only not doing what it's supposed to do, the restructuring, the fiscal restructuring that we need, that we could have done, to begin to set us straight and manage our expenditure and all of that, and even give more confidence to those people who should pay the revenue, was not done. The fiscal guys will tell you that the Minister of Finance, our biggest problem is revenue. If only we could increase revenue. Revenue to GDP is 6%. It's one of the lowest in the world. Fair enough. Okay, but the point is, what are you doing to imbue that confidence in people so that they will pay this revenue this revenue you're looking for so desperately? When you have the chance, and it's not our fault. I'm not saying it's our fault particularly. It's a political thing. If it's not coming from the top, and if the president is not insisting that, look, any car that I'm going to see, in the budget must be coming from Pan or Innocent. That's what the Americans will do. They'll support. That's what the Chinese will do. That's what the French will do. The president of France drives a Renault or a Citroën.
Or a Peugeot.
The guy, or a Peugeot. The guy in Britain drives a Range Rover or a Jaguar. The American president drives a Cadillac. The Chinese guy drives a Kikong. They call it a Kikong. It's their own kind of car. I don't see what's so incredible about this. However, politics is strong. The way this country is run now, the way it is, go to the National Assembly. The issue is, look, I'm senator representing my people of Akure, whatever, Ondo, whatever constituency. And I hear that the guy from Gombe has got one kind of privilege and some monies were paid to him. I want my own. How it's going to impact on the bottom line, nobody cares. So politics is strong, and there's a kind of political capture of our fiscal space that's making things so difficult to change. And so it becomes a nightmare for those who are running the fiscal space. And of course, their employees, their appointees, appointees of the president, are not getting the kind of direct support from the president. Sometimes they just clam up and just keep quiet. And sometimes I think this is what's going on. That's why the fiscal guys say, maybe we can devalue currency. If we devalue currency a bit, that means these $80 we're getting or $85 we're getting from crude oil, we suddenly become at 1,000 naira. That's become 850,000 or whatever, 85 times, or maybe 85,000 naira. That will allow us to be able to pay more of these salaries and just keep going. So you see that they're basically living from hand to mouth. They're basically hanging on a thread. They're basically just shutting their eyes and even perhaps praying that this cup will pass over them and their tenure will end. And then they will go. So that the next person that's coming will come and carry the can.